Welcome, everyone. This is No Bullshit Gaming Podcast for 2.5 Gamers. We're doing the second installment of our Honest Interviews segment. After having Joachim on the show a few weeks ago, where him and Maciej discussed everything related to VC investments, we wanted to follow up that interview by discussing M&A, which is pretty much the other end of the spectrum. So we've all been getting used to seeing these massive headlines with equally massive numbers of gaming companies being bought out and service companies being bought out. But we feel that no one's really actually discussed how M&A in our industry actually works. So we wanted to do a special episode just focusing on M&A in the gaming space, which is why we're super excited for our guest this week, which is Elena Egorova. Thank you so much for coming on. How's your week been?
Thanks for having me. Wonderful as always. Cheers.
Good. Cool. So for our listeners who actually don't know you, haven't seen you around in probably the million of conferences you've been to in the last 10 years, do you mind just doing a quick elevator pitch of yourself, a little bit about your career, mobile gaming, and what you've been up to in this industry?
Sure. Well, you said 10 years, and this is precisely my time in gaming industry. I started in a very small game development studio called Dynamic Pixels, which you guys may know by the game called Hello Neighbor. That is their flagship title, and the studio itself was acquired last year, if my memory doesn't fail me, by a publisher called Tiny Build. And this is, again, like a perfect example of how M&A in gaming is getting more and more traction. Currently, I'm the global head of corporate development in a company called Flexion. I'm trying to build a family of the companies that are catering to the major publishers, aiming to have like this one-stop shop and one-hand solution for everything that is connected to mobile game-oriented services. We have just completed the acquisition of a company called Audiensely, based in Germany, as you, Felix, and also an investment in Light Up Media earlier in 2021. Both companies are in this super hot influencer marketing space, getting more and more traction due to all of the restrictions coming together with, IDFA depreciation, third-party cookie depreciation, and everything that is basically not allowing us to use tracking as before. And so currently I'm in game services space. In my former role, I was an M&A director in a company called EG7, a Swedish public holding. We have completed 5 transactions over 2 years, over like $500 million. Oh my God, that sounds cool. I don't think I've ever seen that much money in cash. Anyways, so prior to that, I was head of international relations in Mail.ru, and there I was holding everything from user acquisition, monetization, publishing, and investments. So yeah, that is me. 10 years. I guess my most memorable transaction from last year is a company called Daybreak. Everybody knows them for EverQuest and lots of those MMORPGs that are basically the founding stones of the genre. And most recent one that I mentioned is the Audiensely for Flexion. So
M&A, so mergers and acquisition, is that something you like fall into accidentally because, you were doing, Mail.ru and that kind of stuff? And like, is it just you kind of accidentally fall into, or how do you get into it?
Fun fact, I actually have an education as a nuclear physicist. So I was very far from investments and mergers and acquisitions in finance. However, for 7 years, when I started doing the first transactions, I was all over the place in the gaming world because I was working for a game studio, for a service provider, for a number of service providers, from advertising networks to agencies. And I think the key factor is the knowledge of the market. The key factor is the understanding of what exactly is driving revenues and profits and how to succeed and how to create those evergreen titles that are going to be, your dairy cows for many, many years ahead. And with all that knowledge, I just basically rode the wave. And when I got an offer from EG7, I didn't hesitate because knowing the gaming company through and through, I think that was my perfect way to contribute to the deal flow. So yeah, it just happened.
So, in summary, you do not need an education in nuclear physics to get into M&A, right?
Actually, it helps a lot. It's a nice icebreaker because then people just kind of feel a little intimidated, and it helps a lot in the discussions when there's a CEO and he's like, "Oh, okay, you're probably smarter than me." Sorry.
Yeah, shit, I can't even spell nuclear physics probably without spell check. So yeah, intimidating indeed.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
So, just for the people that don't know, what does Flexion Mobile do, and why is M&A important, like an important part of their strategy?
Flexion Mobile was originally helping developers to go into the alternative Android stores, such as Huawei App Gallery, Samsung, and Amazon, and Xiaomi, because, more and more restrictions in App Store and Google Play make developers explore what is going on different stores, which are not as huge and popular, but they are highly driven by the devices that OEMs are selling, and they are highly driven by the user's desire and the player's desire to kind of cut their own costs for the games. And also it's convenience because they're all over the place, and having a choice is a primary driver for any market, right, for any consumer. And mobile games players are not an exception. Flexion is working with games, and we have this unique patented technology we call Wrapper that takes the game build and just packs it for every single store that is our partner. And the outcome is 10 to 15% of additional revenues from Google Play. And the thing is, we in Flexion were thinking of how we can possibly diversify our offers to our clients, how we can serve them better, how we can serve them in more different aspects. And this is how buy and build came handy, because if you don't want to grow the expertise through pain and sweat and tears and blood over years, it's a simple solution. You can buy a functioning team and just integrate it within your company. Because for us, you can see that the clear trend is that studios are being acquired and those mega publishers are being formed, such as Electronic Arts and such as Embracers and Steelfronts and Disney's and Take-Two's all over the world. So what do they need? They don't need to work with dozens of different agencies and platforms and everything around the world. They want to have a one-stop shop, a one unified, centralized solution to their games marketing. And this is what we're basically trying to ride on, because we want to provide, our target clients are the top grossing games. I think there's around 700 of them, and top grossing game publishers all over the world. And what we need to do is to understand their needs. What do they need most? They need comprehensive games marketing. They need some comprehensive data science, user acquisition, monetization. So everything along these lines is something in our target list, and this is why we're on this buy and build track.
Cool. Good answer. Yeah. Almost scripted. I like it. Perfect. So let's
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So actually, let's get into like the meat of this kind of a podcast, why we actually wanted to have you on. So we wanted to talk about mergers and acquisitions. So I think for me, like, it sounds super sexy from the outside, but I have no idea what it actually means. Like, could you actually walk us through the whole M&A process? Like, what I first want to know is, like, how do you decide even like what companies to look for? I'm imagining you sitting in like mahogany, something really nice boardroom, and then you decide where you go after. I have no idea, but could you walk us through like that, where you decide who to go after, how you find the type of companies that you're looking for, and then how do you approach companies, and then how do you actually, pay them the cash to make them yours?
Sure. Well, to find the need, you first need to identify what is going on with the market. So you need a certain level of fluency of what's been going on. So you need to read tons of gaming media and tons of services and marketing and all kind of stuff. I mean, my day starts with PC Gamer and Pocket Gamer and Eurogamer and all kind of gamers and all kind of media that there is to understand what's been going on, because sometimes changes happen just overnight. I mean, for IDFA depreciation, we've been knowing for for, I think, a year and a half at least, maybe for a couple of years. But some things are completely like out of the blue. Like, do you remember how Electronic Arts stormed into the transaction that was supposed to happen between Take-Two and Codemasters, and how they basically snatched them in this dramatic moments, like in this romantic comedies when the priest during a wedding ceremony says, "Is there anybody who objects this marriage?" And somebody's like, "I do," and this is what Electronic Arts did. So, yeah, sometimes you wake up and you see like, okay, they're bots. Fine, cool. So somebody spent £15 on Amazon, and somebody spent $500 million on a gaming transaction. So yeah, gaming media and understanding what's going on and what's hot. Flexion specific, I think we talk a lot with developers. We need to understand what is the missing ring in the chain of game services, and we will look how to better serve them and how to better satisfy their needs. Sometimes target companies come from the inbound. Sometimes we haven't even thought about this particular sort of company, and then the bankers, the industry-specific bankers, they reach out and they bring up somebody or a client of theirs, so for which they're looking either for a new home or just looking to sell. And for the studios, I say that there is a lot of additional sources, such as different indie competitions, like Indie Cup, were based in Kiev. We're actually big friends with them. They do have their own pick of the promising indie studios that they're working with. There are also these huge service providers, giants such as Epic. And Epic, for example, they have their own showcases, like online showcases, where they demonstrate the games from the team they know and trust the most. And this is also a great way to pick the best of their own leader. So this is research. Do you have any questions about that?
Yeah, tons. Yeah. So basically, if I'm crystallizing down what you say, you're sitting on this pile of dry powder of like M&A resources that you can put into something. You know exactly what your company needs. And then pretty much you just stay plugged in, and you're like, oh, that looks nice. We should look into that. Is that
precisely?
Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So what happens then? Like, okay, so let's see. You open up Poker Gamer and you hear a new company, and you're like, boom, like that's perfect for us. What happens then?
Well, then you approach the senior management, the C-levels. Usually it's a CEO or COO, because they are the decision makers. It's going to be strange to approach a BDM or something else like this. So you do the initial contact, you describe the opportunity, you say, hey, this is us, this is what we're looking for, you guys seem perfect. How about we have a conversation? And over the course of the next few days, the target company, after signing the NDA, obviously, the target company just, shares some details about themselves, how their business has been historically developing, their future plans, how they plan to grow, which areas of the investment they see, and what areas for growth they see, and obviously the financials. Of course, this is the most important part: the historical financials and their projections for the coming few years. All this data we use to evaluate the company, which, you call the valuation, obviously, and that helps us define the multiples for the company. I think. Well, actually, let's just
let's get into the multiples later. Let's keep that separate. So,
indeed, because it's a huge topic.
Yeah. So diligence, I guess that's what you're describing there, right? You're doing your diligence.
This is the initial due diligence, because this is not yet a formal process. Because the findings that were initially shared, we will use to form an indicative offer to just outline the basic deal terms, and then a letter of intent. So the letter of intent.
So when you say basic deal terms, what does that actually mean? So like then doing the pre-diligence, or what do you call it? Like first diligence?
It's valuation.
Okay.
Valuation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. Just to understand how much we actually want to take out of our wallets to pay for the company.
Is this like pre-diligence, or like that valuation? Is that where you usually find the dirt? Or if any red flags, or is that like at a later stage?
The red flags is something that is going on further after the formal process starts. Because when the formal process starts, it starts with the letter of intent. When it's signed, the company is binded by the exclusivity period. The exclusivity period means that they cannot court any other potential buyers. They cannot disclose any information to potential buyers. And this is just like us and them being in this little room, interrogating each other to understand if this is a match. So the due diligence comprises of four areas: commercial and operational, legal, and financial, which also includes tax. And the first two are usually conducted by the internal team. And this is, again, where all this gaming market knowledge kicks in to understand if everything they claim is true and if there's truly a potential in the areas they claim to have the potential.
Is that you doing that? Or is that when you bring in the suits and kind of the lawyers as well to help you out? Or is it?
As an M&A director, I'm actually leading the commercial and operational due diligence. So everything commercial is in my area of responsibility. While legal, tax, and financial is definitely something the consultants do. But consultants only get involved after the initial commercial and operational due diligence completion, because then we create a report. We call it a red flag report for the board. Basically recommending shall we proceed with the transaction or not, because most of the red flags are usually found in the commercial and operational part, because, for example, the company is claiming that they have like this fancy tech, but in the end it's just basically a dozen of dudes just doing manual work and that's it. Or the company has, if this is a studio, for example, they have like this huge project, which is like $50 million for development. And you look at it and you're like, there's no single chance for it to have more than 5.5 on this. How do you call this service? What is this? I forgot. Where all the evaluation are posted from the users. I totally forgot about that, but we can just leave it out. Anyways, sometimes you discover some red flags. Is
it in the norm, or is it like? Yeah.
It is a norm. In my memory, I've been working on 10 transactions and completed 7 of them. So there is a certain percentage, like let's say 30% of transaction can actually wither in the very development, but that is perfectly fine, because there's also a chance that the target company understands that this is not a great match. And we'll touch it separately a bit later, but when the commercial and operational due diligence is done, the consultants kick in, which is always better when the company also has a banker that is representing them and helps them navigating through those financial and legal stuff. I think this is the most complicated part, because they need to analyze all their P&Ls, all their client contracts, all their taxes for, 5 years, 3 years of operations. So this is a huge thing. So afterwards, when the consultants have submitted their respective reports, we compile a giant report concluding if we shall proceed with the transaction or not. And after that, the board of directors of our company is making a decision. Do they actually agree that we shall proceed? Do they actually agree that? Because it's not a question of a few thousand bucks, right? It's millions and millions. And you have seen the huge numbers. And if this is not enough to convince your parents that gaming business is actually business and not just like fun and games, I don't know what is enough. So hi, Mom. So but again, after the board has vouched that yes, we're going on with the transaction, the sale purchase agreement is signed, which is a giant document that has to be read through really thoroughly, because it basically comprises of all the terms and conditions, of all the obligations and regulations that both companies will have to comply to. And we shake hands, we open a bottle of champagne, and this is where the big work kicks in, the integration. Because while we're buying the company, we want to do something with it, right? I mean, obviously we wanted to retain their operational independence, but we also want to execute the synergies that we've been initially looking for. So that's the process in a nutshell. I mean, obviously there's a huge amount of detail, but overall it's a simple timeline.
Yeah, so this whole process, you make it sound so elegant and easy. How long is this process usually? Because I know that people I know who work in M&A like you, there are certain periods of the year where, you don't hear from you for like a couple of months because you're working on a deal. Like, how long does this usually take from, scouting to popping the champagne?
I would say 4 months is a minimum. 6 months is a standard, but there are always variation because each deal is different. Each company has its own track record of complications and advantages and disadvantages and all kinds of stuff. So it really depends. I would say that less than 4 months is unrealistic, but sometimes it really also depends on how much you actually want the company. If you want to snap a deal, just bury them in cash and that's it. Otherwise, you have to actually put some work into it.
Okay, makes sense. And so this is when you're working the crazy hours for that 4 to 6 months time period, right?
When we were completing Daybreak, I think I got 4 hours of sleep in December. That was fun. No, it wasn't.
So, okay, so for us, like laymen, it's like, why do you need to work those hours? Like, it's a very basic question, but like, I don't know.
You sit here in the M&A deal, you have to work with a number of stakeholders from your own company and the target company. Sometimes it's a matter of time zones. I'm based in London, for example. We can work with a company in China, which will be like farther in time, and we can work with a company in America, which is just waking up while we're having our dinners. And it's also, multiple stakeholders and consultants and processes you have to keep an eye on, because when the commercial and operational part is done, it's not like I'm just sitting there with my arms folded, because I need to see what financial teams have found. I need to see what legal teams have found. Every week, and sometimes like multiple times a week, we have a catch up with the bankers and with the legal teams to see how things are going, if there is anything, because the constant communication and constant cooperation within all the stakeholders is the key factor for the M&A deal success, because only the collective work makes this happen. And you can do a lot on your own, but you cannot do everything. So having our chief financial officer constantly on it, having our CEO on it, our chief operational officer on it, this is super important for everything. So you have to be available for all sides. You have to do your homework to come prepared for the management interviews and to read through the documents. The SPA is usually like hundreds of pages. So it's a lot of work, but it's super rewarding if it's done right.
Cool. I think that serves as a beautiful segue to discuss probably the sexiest topic about M&A, and that's valuations. These big eye-popping numbers. That's what we want to talk about. So let's talk valuations. So we've seen a lot of eye-watering numbers in the past 2 years. Can you just give an overview how companies are priced during the offer stage?
Well, that is the toughest one, I guess. And yeah, it's very difficult to talk about things that we've recently seen, for companies being acquired for peanuts and for companies being acquired for so much that the return on investment is just never going to be seen. So you can see lots of very extreme valuations. And let's start with the simple. Let's start with the classic normal valuation, and the multiple for that is usually chosen. It's not like really calculated. I mean, there's some way of financial modeling and stuff.
You just pull it out of thin air, like this company is 2x.
Not exactly.
Okay.
Not exactly. Yeah. Not exactly. But anyways, a certain number of factors have been considered for this. Obviously, first is market average. So you look and see how other companies are acquired. You can see lots of reports from different bankers. Like, for example, WY Partners is writing comprehensive reports about state of M&A all over the world every quarter, I think. There's also Ignition Capital, there's Arene Capital. All these really notable bankers, they do keep us updated about what's been going on, what are the average multiples for each. And sometimes it's weighted. Weighted means they take out the super high valuations and super low so that we can see the actual average. Because when a 50x kicks in, obviously it just screws up the entire math of the median valuation. But yeah, market average is the first thing I would look into. Second thing, for the tech companies and for service companies, the scalability is a huge factor, because agency model, for example, is very difficult to scale, while the automation platforms with creative and user acquisition and everything around that have, well, pretty much infinite potential to scale. So you can easily extrapolate this for revenues and profits, right?
So that explains why then gaming companies tend to have a lower multiple than services or software as a service companies then, I guess?
So look, service companies are way more predictable. You can easily see that here is a client pipeline, here's how it can be expanded, here are the new markets that haven't been targeted yet, and new geos that you're looking for. And we're going to get X on this one and Y on this one, and that's it. For gaming companies, for studios, it's always, because I do believe that games are art. It's definitely a form of modern art. And art element is always an element of uncertainty. I mean, with the premium game, you can more or less forecast how many copies are going to be sold, while the free-to-play game is basically a terra incognita. I mean, every forecast there is still a forecast, and it's very difficult to predict how it's going to go. And, well, I guess for a studio, a really key factor for valuation is, do they have their own IP? Because licenses are always a little tricky, because not owning something is always a little tricky. Like in the UK, they have this beautiful thing called leasehold, which means that you buy the house for 900 years, and then it's back to the crown. And although, I mean, 900 years, what's going to happen in that time, but you still do not feel that it's yours, because it's still like a leasehold and not like a complete sale. And same with the licenses, because they usually come with conditions. Conditions are with profitability, for example, with the targeted audience, how many players have been brought, and anything can happen, right? And although the licenses are also some sort of like a guarantee for the success, because people are always going to play Lego games, people are always going to play Marvel and DC and Lord of the Rings and all kinds of those, because those are the evergreen franchises. But having own strong, solid IP that is generating profits is always a very big thing for the success. Not to say that's about gaming engines, because I think that with the sophistication levels of Unity, Unreal, and others, that's off-the-shelf solutions, it's very difficult to compete with those in terms of game quality. So I would say that IP is in terms of the gaming titles. So that's it. And yeah, it's always very much more difficult to evaluate the studio rather than
So what's the spectrum right now? So let's say gaming companies and service companies, like what kind of multiple spectrum are we looking at? 2x to 12x for gaming, or is it like way more, or like what would you say?
Mm-hmm. Well, that very much depends, because if the valuation is on profits, on EBITDA or EBIT, I would say that the industry standard is starting from 8, 9. If we're talking about a service company, it really depends on if it's an automation platform, if there's some sort of SaaS, or is this just a simple agency. I mean, I definitely don't want to diminish the agencies, because machines can do a lot for us, but they cannot do everything. So people and being creative and people being, giving their human touch to the thing are also a very valuable resource. However, it's very difficult to scale again, which brings us back to the scalability as a key factor for the valuation. So I would say that in average, the agency multiple is going to be a little lower than the tech multiple, and that is perfectly explicable. And if the company is...
So wait. Just a blonde question here, since I'm blonde. So basically, on deciding if you're going to do, when you're buying a company, if you're going to do a revenue multiple or instead of a profit multiple, is pretty much due to the scalability, the future scalability of the company. Or did I get that completely wrong?
It depends. So usually the profit multiple, the EBIT multiple, is used if the company is profitable and is generating profits. If they have revenue, but they do not yet have profits, they're breaking even, or they're still like investing heavily, it means that we can apply the revenue valuation, which is going to be significantly lower. It's going to be like 1.5 to 3 pretty much for the revenue. And sometimes, even when the company is profitable, the revenue valuation is still applied, because let's say in 2021 you had to do a significant investment. Let's say you hired a new sales team, like let's say you got 4 sales managers and 4 account managers, and this is like a huge contribution, huge investment. But this is like a one-time cost, and you understand that in the future they're definitely going to bring some return on the investment you make in the personnel. If this is a service company, it means that your EBITDA is going to be lower, but the future EBITDA is going to be higher. And sometimes the company, the buyer, can actually make a step forward to the company and as a courtesy offer their revenue valuation for this, because they understand that for this particular year, EBITDA is low, but it's not going to be fair if we just apply the EBITDA multiple. Sometimes also, if this is, for example, a studio, let's say last year they bought a super expensive license from DC, right? Or let's say they have some other significant costs, which are one-time costs. Then you also can apply the revenue valuation. Or there's also another option, which is kind of meeting halfway. There's such thing that is called adjusted EBITDA. So you see that your cash EBITDA is at a certain level, but only because this one-time nature of the investment that was made. And this is how, and this is why they adjust the EBITDA. For example, they take the cost of the license and add this to the cash EBITDA. And this is the way to adjust it and to kind of meet halfway, which is, I think, the best possible outcome for the transaction.
Okay, cool. So that takes us to how you decide on kind of the revenue multiples or like the valuation. So yeah, you decided that, this company that potentially you want to buy for, let's say, X amount of money. Mm-hmm. So next thing I want to get into is how are deals typically structured in mobile gaming services or mobile gaming in general in M&A? Because usually you don't buy companies, or in very rare cases do you buy companies in 100% cash. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Yes, because the thing is, if you acquire a company, first of all, you also have to think about your return on investment and considering the fact how many profits you're going to give them back. You also kind of have to consider your own interests, and you also need to bind the founders so that they commit. Because we at Flexion, for example, we look for founder-led studios. We don't really want them to exit. So we create an incentive structure for them, which
is it an M&A and exit?
Not always. I mean, sometimes, of course, the founder is just looking to retire, or just to buy a better home for the missus, or to go on and create their own business, to become a crypto bro or something. But for us, it's super important to find a founder that is willing to cooperate with us. So it's not exactly an exit. This is more about leveling the company up and providing a certain number of opportunities. Again, you can do a lot on your own, but you cannot do everything. And in terms of that, please go ahead.
Yeah, so what tools do you then use? Cash, stock, is there something else, or gold delivered?
Cash and stock, I think, would be enough. But I would say that there's two parts of the deal, two parts of the price. There's an upfront consideration, which the founder gets when they shake the hands and the SPA signed. And there's also an earnout if the founder is bound to stay. So the upfront consideration is always a combination of cash and stock, different proportions. It depends, cash heavy or stock heavy. I mean, cash heavy deal allows you to avoid dilution. So that's the owner of the acquired company is not becoming like huge, massive shareholder. But if you increase the number of shares, you can save on cash, but then it's also like a little risky. So you always have to weigh a lot of different factors. And stock heavy deal, stock heavy offer also means that the target company really believes in the founder's vision, and they trust them, and they understand that they're certain that the founders can lead their company for success. And it also means that you are committed to bring in the whole group into success, not your own company. And I think for the founder, it's the biggest role, it's a super major role in the group. And it's a very good opportunity for those founders who have outgrown commitment for just their own company and being ready to contribute their knowledge, their expertise, and their passions towards the whole group. So
that's a really interesting insight. So I never thought about it that way. So next time I read about a M&A activity, anything like an acquisition, and it's stock heavy, that means that they had faith in the founder and they really trust him. And if it's pure crash, it would probably say the opposite, right?
It might say a lot of things, but including but not limited to. So.
So this upfront payment, like, is it 10%, 20%? I know you're going to say it depends, but generally, like, where do you want to keep this? I'm assuming it's in your interest to keep that as low as possible, and then, yeah, for the acquiree to have as high as possible. They want to have it as high as possible, correct?
Well, on paper, yes, but it's also the human business, right? We intend to work with those people, so our goal is to make them happy. It's not like we want to pay like the bare minimum and that's it. Obviously, we want to reward them with justice for the success they have built on their own. And obviously, we want to future invest in the company if needed to make them make even more. And I wouldn't say that upfront is a certain percentage of the deal. I would say that upfront is a completely separate thing. And the earnout, which is the second part, is also separate in a way that it is tied not to the past earnings and profits. It's tied to the future success. So everything, like for example, an earnout.
Maybe you should explain like earnout and like how it's usually structured. That's probably a better way to go about it.
Absolutely. So earnout is basically an incentive to keep the founders engaged and to hit the targets that they have. If it's a service company, for gaming companies, it's a little more difficult to kind of create the revenue and profit targets. But anyways, that's also doable. So basically, you apply a multiple on the EBITDA or on the revenue for the, let's say, 4 consecutive years after the transaction. So if we complete an acquisition right now, let's say for 22, 23, and 24, they're going to get an additional multiple for hitting their targets. Sometimes it's a progressive multiple. Let's say if they make 75 to 150% of their target revenues or profits, they get an additional 1x multiple for each profit, which means that they're going to get back every profit that they have made, like back to the founders, back to the company. It can also be, let's say they have done 50% to 75% of their goal. So they're almost there, but something went wrong. I mean, everything can happen, right? So you never know what's going to happen next in our times when everything is so unpredictable. Sometimes there can be like a little dip, but for that dip, let's say, we also still want to reward them. We want to give them like, let's say, half a multiple. And if they fail to get into half of their projected profits, it means that there have been some rather unsatisfactory planning, which means that they will not be having any earnout. But hey, again, each year is usually like evaluated separately. So if, for example, in 2023, they're making more, they're getting their earnout, and that's it. So we're trying to be super fair, and we're trying to entice them so that all the hard work is always rewarded.
You say super fair though, right? But it would be kind of in your interest for you guys to set super high targets, right? And then they reach maybe half of that, and then like they don't get 100% of the earnout or the 50%.
No, we're very much, we are a team right now. And for us, their success is our success. And this is how the group is functioning as a whole. We are very much interested in them being happy, because a happy founder means that they are actually doing their best. And you see, our biggest resource, our biggest asset is people. And people in business, people who are in tech, people who are building our project, people who are, managing our offices. So we really try to be people first and people faced. I mean, everything is obviously the numbers on the balance sheet, but it's also about people having the ownership and doing their best. Because you can see thousands of researches and articles about how happiness in the workplace and overall satisfaction with their lives is actually contributing towards people's contribution at work and their success at work. Mm-hmm. So yeah, people-faced M&A is something that we are committing to.
So, interesting topic. So yeah, earnouts. And then basically, I'm assuming that management has to have some people basically in their team, which brings me to a question I've always wanted to ask. When you're acquiring a company, golden handcuffs, i.e. like who has to stay for that earnout period, how do you decide who gets to wear the golden handcuffs? Mm-hmm. How is that decided?
So I can only talk about my experience, because I haven't really seen the details of other companies' deals, especially private companies. But I know that for us, it's the shareholders who get the earnout. So if, for example, the company just 100% belongs to the CEO, it's only the CEO who gets the earnout. If there is like some tech people in, if there is some other, if the company has a stock plan and like an employee engagement plan with option program or something, then all the employees get earnout. So this is how it works. And naturally, in the course of the due diligence, our target is also to identify the key personnel, the senior management personnel. I mean, again, we kind of try to steer clear out of this key employee concept in Flexion, because we honestly believe that every employee is a key employee. Every single employee in our group is contributing to our overall success, and we really want them to feel that we value their contribution. And this is how we imply this principle of ownership. Because if it's your company and if you're also a shareholder, no matter how much that is, it's on you to give your best for our collective success. And in terms of the senior personnel, there are different instruments to basically retain the key team members. And sometimes it's a signing bonus. Sometimes it's the opportunity to give a better salary, a bigger salary. Because you see, one of the reasons we're doing M&A in game services is because the playground is so unlevel. It's crazy because it's very difficult to compete for the people, which is again the key aspect for every success. It's difficult to compete with the giants who are offering, like a sky-high salaries and crazy benefits and have like a massagist come into the office every day and, like having their own peach tree in the backyard and all this. So it's really difficult. So we want to kind of, in a way, level the playground to give the founders the ability to attract and retain the best talent. And yeah, absolutely, golden handcuffs. It's a funny thing. I'm going to use that in a way because yeah, it's a completely new way to think of it.
So I'm wondering, okay, senior people, like the one you identified, you didn't want to call them key employees, but the ones, yeah. Just out of interest, like in these deals usually, is there like a clause that basically if you buy a company and then like 75% of the employees just leave and it's just the people left with the golden handcuffs, would that like void a lot of these? Like, are there any restrictions for that, or like that's something that could happen?
I would say that this is a very theoretical situation because it's highly unlikely, I would say, because why we look for the existing companies and why we want to buy the expertise instead of growing it in-house, because we want an established team, people who know each other, who work with each other, who understand each other. And this is the thing. And this is also why Amazon's and Google's studios basically failed, because they thought that if you bring the industry veterans together, they will magically start making you great games. But this kind of teamwork and this kind of magic that creates a really, truly great project, it actually comes from time, from people working together and liking each other and actually liking their workplace and bringing their best to work. So I don't think it's likely, because we also hope that, I don't think either of us is working just for the salary, right? We also want to feel that we're doing something important, and we also want to enjoy our
We are
work.
millennials after all, yes.
We have our standards, exactly.
Yeah.
We no longer just close our computer at the end of the working day and just go home and forget about it till the next morning. So yeah, I guess.
Cool. So shifting gears a little bit. So I read a HBS research paper that said that the M&A failure rate is between 70 to 90%, depending on the industry. What's the gaming services failure rate, and why is it so high?
I do not possess the data about our industry failing rate, but I do see some caveats that can potentially lead to a failure, because, buy and build consists of obviously buying, but the other more difficult part, because I mentioned before that the real work starts after the acquisition, right? It is a huge amount of work, and it's tied very closely to why you are acquiring this company in the first place. Is it gain the expertise that you don't have? Is it acquiring more titles, licenses, clients, portfolio changes, or anything? It's entering the new markets, going into, let's say, Southeast Asia, or going to Americas, or Latin America, or anything. And obviously, getting the revenues and profits on balance sheets is amazing, especially for a public company, but M&A can only take you this far. If you're not integrating the company properly after the acquisition, there is a very huge risk that you won't be able to thrive in this like super highly competitive market. And for studios, it's competitive because thousands of games are released every month. For game services, because there are thousands of agencies claiming to provide the best-in-class services. And I think one way to make things work between the two companies is, first of all, having realistic expectations and a clear plan on what you want to achieve through this acquisition. Second thing is having this unified financial system that allows you to understand different accounting standards, because one in Germany and one in the US are going to be completely different. The way they book revenues, because for agencies, it can mean that they count as revenues every invoice got by clients without the deduction for the traffic acquisition costs. It can be profits, it can be something in between. I mean, every company had their own accounting standards, and this is something that you really have to consider, especially if revenues and profits and balance sheets is your biggest goal. Well, business strategy is also one thing, because for us, like when Flexion acquired Audiensely, we had a clear goal of diversifying our portfolio with influencer marketing, because this is something that lots of our clients are already doing, and I think it's getting more and more traction. So in our strategy is that we enhance Audiensely with our support and with our client portfolio and with our tech. And Audiensely, in turn, allows us to improve and broaden our offer to our existing clients, allowing us to serve them better. And this is the perfect example, I think, of a synergy that is being executed. And this is also something that can be easily overlooked by just chasing the buy and build, stacking companies on top of each other. Yeah. It's never actually working in the long term. The real growth is their organic growth. So when the company is showing better financials after being acquired, this is what you're looking for. And I think that it's also kind of shaping the new mergers and acquisition markets. Investors are actually expecting to see how the acquisition has improved both of your company states. And obviously every buyer expects...
What kind of time frame usually do they look at for that? Like, is it like you need to see synergies within 3-4 months, or like, is it a year, or I'm assuming since you publicly traded, it's instantaneously witnessed with the share price fluctuations, correct?
It depends. Sometimes, I mean, right now the market conditions are such that the stock market does not react that much on the news for mergers and acquisitions, because everybody is just taken aback by the world's events. But usually, yes, the share price growth is something that every company is targeting for after merger and acquisition, because it means that every shareholder is getting their value, and it means that the strategy is working, of course. Well, return on investment on the deal, especially knowing how much you're paying in the multiple of company profits. It means that you actually have to be sure that you're getting the value. You actually have to be sure that this synergy is going to work. Because if we're talking about the gaming company, let's say you are buying a publisher, a work-for-hire developer, and a developer that, for example, has some super expensive licenses and some really like long-term relationship with, let's say, Korean giants who are like super close, reserved, and they not so keen to work with the rest of the world, right? What is the possible synergy? I mean, obviously, what comes to mind is that you got a publisher, the publisher is going to publish developers' games, and that's it. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work like that, because a publisher can be specific with, let's say, some sort of indie party games, right? Or some sort of retro games, or MMORPGs, and if the developer is making strategies, for example, it's not going to work because they simply do not have the expertise. However, if this particular developer is sitting in the US and there's a work-for-hire studio that is sitting in, let's say, Indonesia, it means that the costs are much lower, and it means that some of the work for the developer can be outsourced by the team of the work-for-hire, and this is the kind of collaboration that makes more sense in this triangle.
Yeah. Cool. So I think we've been through pretty much everything from how you find it, how you find companies, how you buy them, how the deals are structured. So for the last couple of minutes, I actually just want to get the crystal ball out. Let's talk about the future. So, like, current prediction right now, like, market is consolidating like crazy. Who do you think will be next? In terms of big cap, like, yeah.
The big cap. Oh, well, everybody was a little shaken by how Electronic Arts just snatched the Codemasters from Take-Two, and I think everybody has been discussing the acquisition of Activision by Microsoft.
That's not the future, Elena. That happened already.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you need to understand, Felix, that being a part of a public company means that you have to be super careful in every speculation that you make, because you're kind of representing this company. And this is also something that let's say, if you're looking to sell your company, be sure that all the employees understand they have to comply to the public company standards, because everything you do or say is actually going to affect the share price. So I would say that it's much safer for me to talk about, like the past deals. I must say that I can see a clear trend that the organic growth is becoming more and more important, like something I mentioned to you. The investors want to see the synergies. Another trend that everybody is obviously buzzing about is that pay to earn, NFT and all this stuff. I have no clue.
All right.
I think that here I have the position of more conservative gaming bankers. We want to wait and see. We want to wait and see if this is a bubble or if this is like a real thing. So this is not entirely something that I can speak about with certainty. But again, I think that's understanding that predictions and forecasts are just, being basically drawn and not calculated.
You sound exactly like Maciej now, so yeah. He hates doing the predictions.
But this is the thing, it's easy to kind of create an image of this expertise and this clairvoyance that, I'm certain that this and this is going to happen. In tech space, in gaming services space, I can definitely say that the companies who provide additional tracking solutions and data science and everything from agencies to platforms is going to be data oriented, because we are becoming more and more blind about where our user comes from, who he or she is, and how they're spending. There's more and more different ways of targeting emerging. Some of them are coming from other industries, such as e-commerce, for example. I know that retail is doing something creative with context targeting and everything around. Well, I mean, e-commerce is easier, right? There's like a sports website and you can advertise like sports equipment and sports clothes. With gaming, it's a little different because mobile gaming is more casual. It's not like an average, 44 years old American woman is reading Kotaku or PC Gamer in terms of finding like some new games. It's going to be a little more difficult. So everything that gives us transparency and control over the audience is going to be hard. With gaming studios, I don't know. I think we all can see that the AAA games are now much slower to be released. I mean, last year hasn't exactly been that rich, with AAA. So that might mean that there's more space for AA or even indie companies actually taking their spotlight. So a lot of opportunities. I think that our market is nowhere near being like on its peak. It's still growing. I was just reading I think it was news report that the gaming market has grown for 5% over last year, and 5% in billions is actually a lot of money. So yeah, I'm super excited, just as you are, to see what's the future has for us. So let's see.
Cool. All right. Final question, and then we're done. But So I want to do a little model situation. So, and basically get your 2 cents on it. So Felix's gaming company and co, or Felix's service company and co, has not, like, basically I have a company and no one's knocked on my door and I want to get sold. Yeah. I want to take the money. I want to get a beach house. I want to be happy and, you know, yeah, get a race car. I don't know. So if I have a company right now and I want to get sold, but you haven't been discovered because maybe you have bad marketing or something like that, how would I go about that?
Oof. First of all, I would say that buying a race car is probably the worst rationale for selling the company, because I think the first thing that you need to define is why exactly are you willing to sell. Like, if you just want to jump on the hype train and just like, oh, everybody's selling, I will sell as well. That's not exactly going to lead you anywhere. And this is your business. This is your baby. You've been contributing like so many sleepless nights to it. You've been like, you know, blood and sweat for making it grow. And you need to understand where you want to see your company in 3 to 5 years. I mean, honestly, it sounds like a little outdated HR question, like, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? But it's actually like super important, because this defines the criteria for your potential buyer, because it's not you're just like being bought. It's also you're choosing your new home and you're choosing your new closest partners. And what do you need to grow? Do you need an investment? Do you need a presence in China? Do you need an expertise in, let's say, PC and console while you only have mobile? So there's also a chance that you see, okay, I've done enough on my own. This is the ceiling that I've reached and there's nothing else I can do on my own. And I need like a trusted partner to level up. That's amazing. And I think this is my personal favorite type of acquisition, which means the founder is involved, which means that the founder is really like willing to take that next level. And yeah, that is the best rationale. And obviously you need to know how much you can expect, right? And we're back to that multiples conversation. Yeah. Let's say if you're not generating revenues yet, you are, let's say, in this stage 0, right? Maybe you have a prototype, maybe you're just in soft launch. In that way, I would recommend to just take an investment from a good fund, from a good VC or a good fund, because in the future, not only they will be able to give you like the money you need to scale, to hire like new people and all this stuff, but they can also provide you with guidance in the markets. A good VC can in future introduce you to your future buyer, because they have a portfolio of assets and sometimes they want to exit and sell their part, and they can, you know, showcase you and highlight you to the prospective buyers. That's the best way if there's nothing.
So if I'm summarizing in a no bullshit way, what you're saying is, if you haven't been approached, don't approach us, we'll find you.
Well, it depends. It depends on the maturity. I would say that you should definitely approach investors, because this is what they are there for. They don't have enough time and bandwidth to just, you know.
No, I meant and then like M&A, like to actually get acquired. Like, yeah, you shouldn't approach you guys and be like, buy me.
I would say it's not in your best interest, because if you're tiny and the multiple is, let's say, well, okay, model situation, you get like 100K, right? So let's say we're giving you 10x your 100K EBITDA to get a mil, right? So basically, if you only have like 200K, you would already have like 2 mil. And this is like exponential, you know? And I think that selling in the beginning is not the greatest idea, because you're not going to gain much after that. And again, it's going to kind of difficult the trust levels from the potential buyer if you don't have the track records. I mean, bring it all on. If you've been, I don't know, if you worked on Angry Birds, say it. If you've been in Supercell, if you've been in, I don't know, Konami or somewhere else, just say it. Say it. Prove them that you have done something, that there is a track record of your successes in the past. And that could also be an argument. But otherwise, it's going to be just a little more difficult to sell the idea to the buyer why he has to, you know, open his wallet and give you more cash.
Beautiful. That was a great way of finishing, I think. I want you to thank you so much for coming on the pod. Yeah, I had a great time discussing. I learned a lot. Thank you, everyone, for listening and tuning in. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll see you again next week.
Thank you, Felix.
Thank you, Elena. Bye.